Hi, everybody. Whoops, hold on. So I'm Sophia. I am the PR chair for MAPS for this year. So thank you all for coming. So nice to see you all. So right now we will have Weiren present. So he works as a he worked as a research assistant at the hospital as he was finishing his pre-med requirements. He was also the SNMA liaison for MAPS about 2 years ago. And he used to be in the biology PhD program over at Johns Hopkins, but later, after 2 years, left the program to pursue medical school here. So now I will hand it off to Weiren.
All right, thank you, Sophia. Can everybody hear me? All right, good. Are you guys having midterms now, or is it okay? Midterms already? Okay, so it's not really the beginning of the school year then. Okay. All right. Okay, so thanks MAPS for having me. As Sophia said, I was the MAPS liaison a couple of years back, but I've been continuing involved with SNMA since my M1 year. But so my name's Weiren. I am currently a fourth year medical student here at Carver College of Medicine. Let me share my slides actually. Hi, my name is Weiren. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. A little bit. Hold on, give me a sec. Okay, all right, let me try that again. All right, okay, so where did I stop? Anyway, so fourth year medical student here at Carver College of Medicine. A little bit about my background. So I grew up in Iowa City here. I went to West High. And I went to college in Philly, where I worked in the biochemistry lab for all 4 years of college. So after I graduated, I went to the biology PhD program and came back after I wanted to do medical school. So when I was doing pre-med requirements, I also worked in the translational research lab. So for me, I was able to kind of get into research relatively easily because my mom is a scientist and has a PhD. But I do realize that many students, especially for students who traditionally come from underrepresented minority backgrounds, do not have the same access to the information that I had or students with family or friends in science or medicine would have. So as an effort to kind of further equity in the access to information and opportunity, I wrote a guide for MAP students on how to get research experience in college. And so this guide is also free, available for free on the University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion website. So I'll have a link at the end. So if you want to kind of check it out, it's a little bit more detailed than what I will be talking about here. Oh, sorry, that was the next slide. Anyways, so I have a question for everyone. So in the chat, I would like you to answer this question. Why do you want to do research? If you can just put A, B, or C. And I just want to see what you'll say. Okay, some A's and C's. Okay, that's pretty good. All right. So yeah, so when I gave this talk previously to MAPS and SHPEP students, I've also gotten all of the above answers, which is perfectly fine. Now, I would like you to answer the next question for me, A, B, C, or D. What should you get out of your research experience? Would you want to do A, make a contribution scientifically, B, publish your paper so you can improve your CV, C, gain new knowledge, new experiences, or D, to be able to talk about your research project to impress random people you meet in the elevator? Okay, good. ABC, a lot of ABCs. All right, perfect. All right, good. So, kind of a trick question. So for the purpose of my talk, the right answer for this one is D. So why D? Well, we can first change the answer D a little bit to talk about my research project to impress the admissions committee. There are a number of nice videos on YouTube on how to get into research during college, and they all have a lot of good information on there. For this talk, I am more specifically talking about how to best get research experience that you can then use for your medical school application or any other health professional school that you're applying to. My goal for all of you is to enhance your application to with research experience so that you can become a doctor and to contribute to diversity in medicine and to fight inequalities and disparities. And it's not really for you to pursue research so you can become the next Rosalind Franklin. Since that is our goal, I think the most important thing is to demonstrate that to the admissions committee that you understand the scientific process and how research is conducted. And you demonstrate this by being able to confidently talk about your research experience during your interviews. And again, so this is the answer to this question. This is all my opinion and it's based on my own experiences. And of course, if you talk to other people, they will have other opinions, but this is just mine. So take it with a grain of salt. Okay, so what kind of research can you do? So basic science research is in the STEM fields, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Basic science research is about investigating how the world works, how different biological, chemical processes work. And most of the time, basic science research is done in a laboratory setting. Translational research is a lot like basic science research in many ways. Translational research is about taking the knowledge of basic biological, chemical, or physical processes that are discovered in basic science research and then applying it to create new medical therapies, procedures, or tests that can potentially be used to improve human health. And clinical research is somewhat different from the first two in that clinical research involves projects seeking to understand, answer questions about kind of safety, effectiveness, and outcomes of medical practices, procedures, and treatments. For medical school, you can also do research in humanities and the arts as well. But most of my experience is in basic and translational research. So that's what most of my talk will be kind of geared towards. Okay, so there are different ways that you can go about finding that research opportunity. You probably know about some of these, so I won't go into it that much. And I think also at the end of the talk that you will also have someone who from ICRU that will talk to you as well. Talking about that is actually great because the fact that we have a center here at University of Iowa that is dedicated to undergraduate research, that's a great place for you to kind of start to find that first research opportunity. And I see that on their website, they actually have listings of open research positions that are posted by a lot of professors in their labs. And I think these are great resources for you to kind of look into and great positions to apply to, in that these professors are probably looking for a student to work with them. So it means that they're eager to mentor students. Another way that you can find research opportunities is search for professors on the departmental websites. And this is probably the most likely the method that you will use to get in touch with your potential research mentors. You can also find out about research opportunities by talking to the professors that you're taking classes from and your teaching assistants or upperclassmen. For example, if you really enjoy your biology 101 professor, you can ask if they might be open to mentoring a student. Even if they're not looking for a student to join their lab right now, they might know someone who is, and you can actually make some connections that way. By talking to your research teaching assistants, you also can learn a lot about professor and maybe the kind of mentor they are. And finally, if you do happen to have friends or family connections that can help you to get some research experience, I would definitely absolutely use it. So a few tips on optimizing your search for professors. When you find one that you're interested in, make sure that you kind of take a look at their publications on PubMed. And you can kind of specifically look at the dates of their publications to get an idea of how productive they are. For example, if they have many papers that are published recently in 2019, 2020, this means that the lab is currently active and doing a lot of research. However, if you see that, if you find someone you like, but their most recent publication is in 2014, that probably means that they're not, the professor is not very actively doing research and their lab might not be open anymore. You can also skim through their abstracts of the papers that they've published to kind of see what the lab is working on and the type of methods and techniques that they use. Many professors also have their own labs, have their own websites. And so a lot of that information is on there already. And there's also like a lab members section on those websites, and you can kind of gauge how big the lab is and see if it is some place that you might see yourself in. So the next step is to contact your professor, potential mentor, and see if they are interested in taking a student. So make sure, and this is mostly done by emails, and you want to make sure that you write an email that is both professional and you always address the professor as Dr. or Professor so-and-so. And in the email, be clear about why you're emailing, is that you want to get research experience as an undergrad and would like to work with them. You can give a short introduction about yourself and a little bit about your background and talk about why you're interested in this professor in particular. Also, why their research interests you. Finally, ask if they might consider taking in a student and if they would like to meet. You can send emails to multiple professors to increase your chance of getting a response. So I would keep a template and kind of edit them to suit each professor as necessary. So here I have an example email that you can use, and these are also in my guide. Now, when I was contacting professors in undergrad, I used to Google template emails online because I never knew like what's appropriate to write in them when I was actually trying to write it. So if you're like me, then I hope these examples can help you get started, but if not, just you can ignore them. So quickly over this sample email, first paragraph, I just introduce myself, my major, and state that my intentions is to obtain research experience. Next, I talk about my past experience. If you had done research in the past or anything similar, you can talk about that, about what project you did and what you learned from it. If you don't have previous research experience, that's also perfectly fine. You can include some information such as your major and your current coursework and what you're interested in. Talking about your major and coursework tells the professor kind of what knowledge that you will be coming in with and that you understand the professor work is how the professor's work is relevant to what you're studying. For example, you know, if you're doing neuroscience and you're contacting a professor that's doing brain research. So you can also talk about other work or extracurricular activities that's significant to you that also demonstrate kind of characteristics that's valuable in research. For example, you can talk about how extracurriculars that can highlight collaboration and teamwork, self-learning, or problem-solving skills. So those are all valued in research. And then I talk about why I want to work with this professor specifically. And then finally, I end the email by asking to meet. I wouldn't write an email that's much longer than this, but don't write one that is too short either. Okay. Way I would go about emailing each professor is that I would email them one by one. I think this is probably the best way to go about rather than sending out multiple emails in one sitting. Emailing one professors one by one makes choosing labs a little bit easier. You're busy with classes, and scheduling one meeting is much less stressful than trying to schedule 5 meetings over the next 2 weeks in between your classes. So additionally, I would send out these emails one by one. And also sending out multiple emails in one sitting, you run the risk of copy and pasting the wrong person's name, and that would be very awkward if you actually did that. So, but again, this is just my opinion. Okay, so now that you've set up a meeting with your potential mentor, what do you talk about? So from my own experience, that these meetings are pretty informal, and it's more of a conversation rather than a formal interview. A lot of professors love to talk about their research and really can go on and on about their work, which is great. And they can talk about it for a long time. But that being said, you can't really go wrong with preparing as much as you can, so you can make a good first impression. And that means being somewhat familiar with their work. They don't expect you to completely understand what they're doing. But they being familiar with kind of the topic and the general goal of the research is a good idea. You should also come prepared to answer their questions about your own background as well. For things that you want to make sure that you talk about during a meeting, you should first establish what you want to get out of your research experience. Make it clear that you're there to learn how to conduct research, how to perform experiments, and participate in the scientific process. You want to work on a research project, and you're not there to clean lab dishes or do any other menial work. Next, you might talk about different projects that, in the lab that you can possibly work on. The professor might already have a project in mind for you. Then you can talk about what expectations that they have for their undergraduate research students. Ask about how many hours a week that they expect you to be in lab, basically how involved that they expect you to be. Most professors know that you're an undergrad and that you have classes and other obligations, especially if you're pre-med or pre-health, and won't be expecting you to be too much involved. But you still want to make sure that you kind of know upfront what those expectations are. Finally, you might meet some other people in the lab, and you should talk to them if you can. You can ask them about their project and how they like working in the lab. And this is really important in that because you can kind of gauge the culture of the lab and how you will fit in. You can also see how happy and what they think of the professors that you're going to work with. So that's pretty important too. So again, I have another question. I would like you to pick a project, A or B. So for A, you had a really good meeting with a new and young professor. She has a potentially groundbreaking projects that she wants to get started with and is in a field that really interests you. And you will be working with a first-year grad student to kind of help get this project off the ground. Or B, you meet a professor recommended by an upperclassman. So this project isn't too interesting to you personally. You will work with a postdoc on an ongoing project that the postdoc has already been kind of working on for a while. However, the professor has a good reputation for being a great mentor and has past mentees that go on to go to medical school. So which one would you pick? All right, let's see. A's, B, some B's. Good, perfect. All right, good, some B's. So in the past, I've had more A's. So again, you can kind of tell from my first two questions, for me, the right answer is B. So for the purpose of going to medical school and not going to research, I think personally, B is the more valuable and more efficient choice for you. So why pick B? So first of all, this professor in B already has a great reputation for, well, first of all, let me say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with A, going with A. But for our goal, I think, which is to get you to your health professional school of choice, I think the B is a better choice. So going back to why pick B, he has a great, they already have a great reputation for being a good mentor. And this is great for you because you can go in knowing that this professor knows how to mentor students. They most likely have mentors many students in the past, and would know how to write an effective letter of recommendation for you. A new professor who is just starting out might be an amazing mentor, but the thing is that you won't know until you won't know that going in. And if it turns out that they're not a really good mentor, your research experience might not be as productive. So I just wouldn't take that chance. You won't have you're going to be busy in undergrad. I would choose one that is would probably have a higher probability of yielding some good results for you. Next, why would you choose the boring project B and not the sexy, possibly world-changing project in A? So this has to do more with being efficient with your research experience. In short, the project in B is more likely to produce concrete results faster. And by joining an established project, most of the troubleshooting and the kinks of the project will have been worked out. And this means that you can just learn to do the experiment well, be able to generate the results, and get your name on a publication. Whereas a new research project, that has never been done before, will require a lot of time and effort to get it off the ground. It will require a lot of troubleshooting and figuring out which experiment best demonstrates or proves your project's hypothesis. And so this is time that you as an undergrad don't really have. While it might be intellectually stimulating, I don't think that it's the most efficient way for you to reach your goal to become a doctor. Finally, also be mindful of who you'll be working with. So in B, you will be working with a postdoc. So a postdoc is someone who have graduated with either a PhD or MD, and is just getting more research experience in the lab and trying to produce more publications. They're much more experienced and can teach you a lot more than a first-year graduate student. Again, this is just my opinion. Everyone has different views. But personally for me, I think for our goal of going to medical school, your interest in the project is also almost not very important in terms of getting a good research experience that can help you to get into your dream health professional school. Okay. Some tips for when you get started. This pertains more to if you find a position in a basic science or translational research lab. Make sure you have a good relationship with the person that you're kind of working with. When you're in the lab, you'll probably be working with a postdoc or a senior graduate student. They will know how you work and can report back to the professor on your progress. So when the time comes to write your letter of recommendation, the person that you're working with closely will probably have a lot of input. So it's really crucial that you have a good relationship with that person. Also clearly communicate your schedule to your professor and your lab mentor, and be there when you say that you're going to be there. And when your lab mentor is teaching you some techniques in the lab, make sure you learn it well and take notes. Also very important when you're working in a research lab, you're expected to be professional in all your interactions. Be respectful to everyone in the lab and around the lab, and any negative interaction can reflect badly on you. But this doesn't mean that you let other people step over you or get you to do things for them. Remember that you're there to learn, and if someone in the lab that's not working with you wants you to like wash the lab dishes, you just don't do it. But you do clean after yourself after you finish an experiment. Do this diligently. Don't use things that are not yours without asking first. That's a huge pet peeve of people who do lab research, bench research. And then always ask if you have questions. And then keep in regular contact with your professor because a lot of professors are busy. You might not see them in the lab that much as they're away on conferences or meetings. If you don't see them very much, you can email them to let them know your progress on a regular basis. If you work in a smaller lab, you might not have that problem if you see your professor more often. Also, if your schedule allows, I would go to lab meetings and attend seminars and presentations, especially those that are given by your professor or other members in the lab. And this is a great way to show your professor that you are involved and engaged in the lab, and which will reflect well on you once it comes around to writing that letter of recommendation. So about getting papers published. Getting your name on papers is hard. It depends on a lot on luck. A lot of times experiments just won't work or your hypothesis is wrong. It also depends on your professor. Some professors are very relaxed about putting undergrad names on their papers. Others are more strict and wants you to contribute to actual published data. And, and it really just depends on the professor. And as I already talked about, you can maximize your chance of getting a publication by joining ongoing projects that is on the verge of getting published. And do some undergrads get first author papers? Yes, but it's very hard and requires a lot of work. First author paper means that you contributed the most to the conception and the design of the project. You did most of the work and wrote the manuscript. And this actually takes a full-time graduate student a couple years to do usually, and especially in basic science research. So it's not expected of you as an undergrad, and everybody should be focused on maintaining a good GPA first and getting a good score on the MCAT. Regarding presentations, posters, and research symposiums, you can definitely participate in a lot of those. There are great ways to demonstrate to the admissions committee that you've been productive, and they're proof that you've engaged in research. You'll probably first kind of practice presenting in lab meetings first and get advice from professors and the lab members. There are also many opportunities for you to present your work in research symposiums. I believe the ICRU holds a research poster presentation symposium in the fall and in the spring as well. So look out for those opportunities. Okay. So this is what I believe to be the most important part of your research experience in terms of applying to your dream medical school or health professional school. And that is communicating your research experience in your application. By communicating clearly what your research is about, you demonstrate to the admissions committee that you, one, have a comprehensive understanding of your project and the scientific principles behind it. And two, that you have good communication skills and is able to logically explain something complex into something that is understandable. So writing about your research and applications, I will mostly be referring to medical school applications here, but other health professional applications I think are pretty much similar. I believe you will have a place in your applications to write a description of your different experiences, your activities, and this description have a limited amount of characters. So what you write in there has to be clear and succinct. So a good structure for this description will include a clear introduction of what your research is about, kind of the big picture. And then next, you can talk about exactly what you did, the experiments, the methods that you used, what results you got, and what the results mean. And then write about why your research is important and what potential applications that it can have on medicine or healthcare. And finally, if you do have any space left, you can write about what you gained from your research experience. And so this is what the admissions committee will be seeing when they do look for research experience. Just from your description, they have thousands of applications to look through. So they will not be going through your previous presentations. If you have them, they will just be looking at this. So make sure that this is good and clear and succinct. Next, so after you submitted your application and got an interview, and you're really happy, so at the interview, your interviewer reviewed your application and saw that you did some research. And so they ask you, tell me about your research, and what would you say? So it's very important that you nail the answer to this question. Your response to this question will follow the same structure as what you've written in your application, but you should focus your response in your interview on why your research is important and how it can have potential medical or healthcare applications. This will demonstrate that you can think outside the details of your research and see the big picture. Furthermore, focus on things that you learned from your research experience and talk about how that will help you in your health profession. For example, you can talk about how you collaborated with other research groups and other scientists in different labs and learn about the value of teamwork and collaboration, and can apply this when you apply this knowledge when you're a medical student and have to work in an interprofessional setting. So that's something, that's an example that you can kind of use to describe what you've learned about your, what you learned from your research experience. Also remember to sound enthusiastic when you are explaining your research. And you can do this by emphasizing the unique aspects of your research. Are you using a novel technique? Explain why that technique is really cool and how it answers your research question. Does your research project have the potential to change the way a certain disease is diagnosed or treated? You can talk about possible implications of your research findings. So this way, you not only demonstrate your passion, you also show that you understand how your research fits into the big picture. So if you fumble your response to this question, it's very bad. It makes it look like that you don't know your research, even though you might know it very well. Even if you have multiple first author papers on your resume and many presentations, if you don't answer this question well, it kind of casts doubt on everything in your application. It's very hard to come back from this, so make sure you do prepare your response. And talking about something complex into something that's fluid and understandable it doesn't really come naturally to most people. It definitely doesn't come naturally for me, especially since English is my second language. So what I've done, and so what I think that you should do, is to prepare and practice your responses and do a lot of practice. Okay. So here's some common questions I've gotten in the past. So some common questions I got is, first, how much research should you do? And I think that if you do have some research experience, I think you should have at least one research experience when you apply, if you do want to have that on your application. You definitely don't have to have research experience, but if you do, I will have at least one. And this is also a matter of quality over quantity. If you have one research experience where you work on a project that you can really explain clearly during your interviews, then that is really all you need. You really don't need 10 different research experiences on your resume to demonstrate that you have done research and know how to do research. Of course, if you end up liking research, you can absolutely take on more projects in your lab, or you can also find opportunities in different labs or different fellowships that you can apply to in the summer, so you can learn more things. Because research is so integral to evidence-based medicine, the admissions committees just want to see that you have participated in research, that you have a good understanding of the scientific method and how science is carried out. And you demonstrate this by being able to clearly communicate what your research was about. And so second question I've gotten in past is if research in social sciences or arts is looked favorably upon. Again, I think you can do research in almost any field as long as you're able to talk about it effectively. As long as you can explain the purpose of your research project, kind of what you did, what results you got, and what conclusions that you made, and what skills that you have gained from that experience. I don't think that the admissions committee really care about what field that your research was on. I do think that because research in the STEM fields is more common in applicants, who do research than applicants who do research in social sciences or arts, you might actually be at an advantage if you do research in social sciences, because it might seem more interesting to the admissions committee, but I'm not actually entirely sure about that. So there's somebody that will ask, like Amy Ahern at Carver College of Medicine admissions, about if that's a preference. She'll probably tell you there's no really preference. So I think you're good to go either way if you do research project in social sciences or the arts. A third question I've gotten in the past is, do admissions committee prefer multiple research experiences, multiple different ones, or just like one long-term research experience? Again, I personally don't think that they really care. There are kind of pros and cons to either case. If you do stay committed to one long research experience, I believe that you have a greater chance of contributing to, oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to advance the slide. There we go. Okay. Where was I? Right. So one long-term big research that you've done, I think you have a greater chance of contributing to a publication and getting something out there, but that's definitely not guaranteed. If your professor, if you do stay in the lab for a while, you also have the more time to get to know the professor, and they might actually write you a more personal and stronger letter of recommendation. But on the other hand, if you do research in different places, in different labs, I think you can learn a lot about different topics, different fields, and become a more well-rounded applicant. Additionally, if you do have multiple research experience, you can choose which mentors that can write you the strongest recommendation letter possible. Okay, so that's the end of my talk. The main takeaway point is that the main goal is to get you to your health professional school of your dream. And we can use a research experience to get you there. And in my opinion, knowing your research very well enough that you can talk about it effectively is the most important thing here for our goal. And finding that experienced mentors that can help you and advocate for you is also very important. So you can actually, I don't think you can click on this. You can click on this link, but I do have the link to the guide on the Harvard College of Medicine website, the diversity office. So if you want to go there, it's also I can also send out a link in the chat later. There's sample emails in there, sample research, my sample AMCAS research experience descriptions, and also kind of like what I talked about, kind of my script when I practiced when I was talking about my research experience in my interviews. Also, feel free to contact me in my email with any question that you have. Also, thank Dr. Del Castillo, Dr. Martinez, and my SMA friends. And I can take any questions.
I have a question. So you gave us an example of an email or an email template of what what the email should look like. Can you give us a short explanation of what when they don't email you back and you give them a reminder?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I would say, so they're busy, the professors are busy, so I would say that if they don't email you back, like in 5 days or a week, I would email them again. And if they still don't email you back, I will forget about them. I think one reminder email kind of to ask them is enough afterwards, but then you can move on to the next one. So I think that's why I kind of suggest going one by one. I think usually they are pretty good. Even though they might be a little late, they are pretty good at responding to your emails. But if you don't hear from someone, I would just move on to the next one. Is that okay? And then I have a question from Shia Hodges. Okay, about where to find research opportunities. I believe Gianna told me that ICRU is going to talk a little bit about that at the end. So look out for that. Kind of going back to previous slides, you can find, so kind of just quickly going over our dedicated research center website. finding professors on departmental pages, talking to your professor in your classes that you've taken, your biology 101 class, your neuroscience class, talking to your upperclassmen who are your friends that you know have done research. Also, if you do have family members or friends that have connections, I would use them. Any other questions?
Okay, we have time for one more question before we have ICRU present. So does anyone have a last question?
Being an undergrad research experience with no research experience, how can you show professors you will make a positive impact in the research? Good question. So I think even though if you don't, I don't think the professors emailing would expect you to have previous experience. I think what you can do to kind of convince them or show them is you can demonstrate that by your enthusiasm. Like kind of like what I've been going through in my email, my sample email. You can kind of talk about why you can demonstrate this by knowing and understanding what they're being familiar with what that professor's work is about. Knowing a lot, learning about that, reading their papers, kind of getting a rough idea of what their papers are about, and talking about that in your email and saying why that interests you, why you find that interesting. That really shows how that you've done that research, that you've taken the effort and the time to look into their work. And I think that's something that will really make a good impression on them, and that they know that you're someone who is motivated and someone who is willing to do the work. And if these think that, then they will think that you will make a positive impact on research. When is a good time to start doing research as an undergraduate student? I think anytime, because it depends on when you're applying. It depends. So I think some people who haven't done much research usually sometimes take like a year off after their last year. If you can start early, I would definitely start early. But I didn't really talk about this, but I think the most important thing is to have a good GPA and have a good MCAT. That's the most important thing for all of these schools. Research experience is an extracurricular. It's not something. If you have a bad GPA, if you have not a good MCAT, it's not going to save you. Your research experience is not going to save you. So you should definitely have that base of good GPA and a good MCAT first. And then if you can do that, then adding the research experience is just something that that's extra and that will work in your favor.
Okay, thank you very much, Weiren. I think we'll be having Dr. Kirby and some undergraduate students presenting for ICRU. Dr. Kirby, when you're ready.
All right, just had to get down to unmute there. So hello, everyone. I'm Bob Kirby. I direct the Iowa Center for Research by Undergraduates, and been doing that since we formed the center back in 2006. I was an undergraduate researcher myself. That was quite some time ago. And then joining me tonight, I see Saul there, I see Hope, and I think I saw Hengsie's name earlier. I've got 3 individuals who serve as what we call ICRU ambassadors. They're undergraduates like you, but they're students who have already been involved in research, and they're going to share a little bit of their experiences with you. We're going to be pretty informal about this. I'm going to give you some of the things that I think are important as you think about getting involved in undergraduate research. But really what I want to do is be able to let Saul and Hope and Hengsi share their personal experiences with you. Make this a chance for you to raise questions with us. So as I said, I'm Bob Kirby. I direct the Iowa Center for Research by Undergraduates. I was an undergraduate researcher in the neurosciences, psychology, came to the UI back in 1983 as what's called a postdoctoral fellow. I was actively involved in research for a couple decades, had a lot of undergraduates work with me, and then I worked within the university's honors program and ran ICRU at the same time. So we do a lot of focus on undergraduate involvement in research. We'll try and bring that out to you. And what I'd like to do now is go ahead and give Hope, Sal, and Hengsi a chance to introduce themselves. And I'm going to pick on them just so they know who I want to go. And because I'm seeing Hope first on my screen, I'm just going to let her go ahead and unmute herself, and she can introduce herself, let you know who she is, how you can contact her, what she's involved in for research, and what year she is. So anyway, Hope, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Hope. I'm a sophomore, and I work for the Lynn Lab in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology. My major is biomedical sciences. If you want to contact me, my email is just hope-fury@uiowa.edu. I first got involved in research. I started actually at the very beginning of my freshman year. And the way that I did that is I emailed the professor about a month beforehand, and I told her, like, I'm really interested in your research. Would you be interested in having me come to work in your lab? And she told me that she wanted to meet with me at the beginning of the semester to kind of get to know her a little bit. But then actually what happened is a couple weeks after I sent that email, like 3 of her undergraduates quit, and she got really worried. And so she started accepting undergraduates really fast. And so I don't know if this got touched on, but sometimes it's good just to get your name out there with people, and then they have you kind of to network with. And so I think that's one thing that's really important. And the reason I started doing research so early is because I want to do an MD PhD, and obviously research is a very big part of that. So if anyone there is interested in that specifically, you could let me know and contact me. As for my research, we mostly study kind of like the development of zebrafish. So we genotype them and see what their genetics are, and then we cross them so that we know what genes the embryos will have, and then we study those to see how they develop. If you're interested in that, you can talk to me about that too. I think that's about it. Am I missing anything?
No, that's a good start. I'm going to probably call on each of you again to talk a little bit about maybe how you first got involved, how you contact the professor, time commitments, that sort of thing. So I think we'll just go ahead and let each one of you introduce yourselves. How about Saul? I think you were up there next. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Hengsi can.
Sure. So my name is Saul Ocampolanda. I also started research kind of towards the middle of my freshman year, so finishing up my first semester. I actually found my job through HireHawk, or it's called Handshake now, I guess, handshake.com. It's just an employee portal, so there are actually like all kinds of jobs listed on there for all departments and all fields. And there just happened to be a lab looking for an undergraduate assistant. So they were actually looking for undergrads to work for them. So interviewed with the lab, that's the Campbell Lab in the Department of Molecular Physiology and Biophysics over at the Carver College of Medicine. And it was a very interesting interview. I enjoyed it a lot, honestly. Because I was so kind of early in my college career, we focused a lot on my high school experiences, which is, I don't know how much that experience will vary. I think because I didn't really have a whole lot of time at the university, there wasn't a lot to go off with that. But yeah, I'm in my 3rd year now, so I've been doing research for about 2 years. The Campbell Lab focuses on muscular dystrophies, so I do things like work with mice, genotype mice. I've gotten into designing some experiments with the mice. I also do what's called Western blotting, so it's just protein analysis. So I cover a lot of different things personally, as well as things like do the dishes and restock and check in packages. So yeah, I'll put my email in the chat actually, just because why not? And you guys can reach out to me there if you have any questions, and I'm sure Bob will reach out as well. So.
And there's a general for their, so there are about 25 students serving currently as ICRU ambassadors. And on the ICRU website, there's a section where you can see each one of them. You can see what majors they have, what year they are in school, where they're doing research. And they're a great resource for you to be able to have that kind of direct student-to-student connection to be able to raise questions with them. So I think that's going to be an easy place for you to be able to find some people if you want to talk to them about what they're doing, how they got involved. They're a really, really useful resource for you. So why don't we go on, and Hingsi, oh, you've got your picture up now, great. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sanshi. I am a senior biology major, pre-medical student, and I work in 2 research labs. One of the lab is in cognitive psychology. The other lab is in neuroscience. And I got involved through Hire a Hawk. I basically found kind of a glassware washing position, and then it gradually evolved into a research based program. And then I found the other research position through a TA in my introduction to psychology class. So yeah.
Great. So I will go ahead and step back and do a little bit of overview time. So when should you get involved? These are some questions that came up earlier. The when part, I think, is the sooner, the better. Research is something that just grows as you're involved in it. It is a place where the more time you're there, the more somebody gets to know you. That's wonderful when it comes to recommendation time. And then I think the other part is just what you're able to contribute, how you're able to kind of develop your own confidence at what you're doing really comes about with continued involvement. So don't delay. If you're interested, start reaching out to people now. And on the ICRU website, there's an About Us, so you can find out where we're located, who to call, all that sort of good stuff. But most importantly, there's an information for section. And in that, it breaks down into information for students and information for faculty. So duh, you want to go in the information for students section, right? So you go in there, and there's a section about getting involved. And it breaks down how to go through departmental websites. Most of them will have a section on research, and it breaks down. So biology is a department. You can go in, they'll break it down into the developmental aspects, the neurobiology, the 5 different kind of training areas they have. And then you can see each of the researchers involved in that area, and you can see the sort of work they do. Do not get involved in research unless it is something that interests you. If you want to go on to medical school and have no interest in getting involved in research, do not do it. It will be a complete waste of your time and probably going to be a waste of the researchers you work with time. So only do it if it's something that grabs you. And I think that's one of the things that makes undergraduate research so fun, is really getting to pick something that you care about. You may not know it really in depth at this point, but there are going to be some areas that interest you more than other areas. I was really interested in neurosciences because I wanted to understand how the brain works and why we develop the way they do, and could things you're undergoing from the environment change how your brain is going to be wired later on. Those just engaged me at the time I was an undergraduate. And frequently we'll have students come in and say, oh, I'm interested in cancer research, I'm interested in children, I'm interested in XYZ. And that's a great starting point for where you should look at for what you want to be doing. Sometimes Hire a Hawk can work well if you need to find a job. Sometimes that can lead to a better position for you. But commonly, I think the best way to go is talk to other students like you that may already be involved in research. Come in, talk with us in the ICRU office. We are located in the basement of what's called Gilmore Hall. I don't know if people been by there before. So walking across by Tippie College of Business, Pomerantz Career Center, those kind of places, we're right on the Ancillary Walkway. Tuesday and Thursdays, we have hours now, so you can come in and talk to us. But probably the easiest way would be to just reach out like everybody else at the university. My email is my first name, my last name, but instead of Robert, it's Bob. So just bob-kirby@uiowa.edu, or we even have ICRU@uiowa.edu. But go in and start looking at places that you're interested in. Thank you, Gianna. I appreciate throwing that one up there for us. But start looking in areas that you may be interested in. So One way to do that would be, I'm a major in neuroscience. All right. There's a listing of all the people associated with the neuroscience program at the university. So you can look through and see who's doing something that grabs you. What are you excited about doing? And then start a list of those names. Like they were bringing up before, don't send an email to 15 people at the same time. Bottom line, they talk to each other. So if they all get this nondescript email saying, hey, can I come in and talk to you because I want to work in your lab? They could care less. All right, they're probably not going to respond. So you got to make it in some way personal. I was looking at opportunities for research in the neurosciences. I saw your work on Huntington's or Parkinson's or whatever it's going to be. And don't try and sound like you're too informed, because then you go in and you try and interview with them and they start talking about all these things that are way above your head. You end up feeling really stupid, and that's a bad way to start things out. So just go in and say you're excited about their work, but don't worry that you do not know a lot already. For many faculty, for many researchers, that is great, because as some of them will say, you have not learned bad techniques yet. They don't need to retrain you on something. What they care about is, are you a responsible individual? Are you going to let them know if there's something you don't understand, or if you make a mistake in something? You're going to step up and say, hey, I think I did something wrong. Could we talk through this? Or I just want to let you know that I broke a beaker. Wow, you're not the first person who did that, people. That happens all the time. I thought I was the only one working in the lab at some point during my PhD. I put the centrifuge to a certain speed. I was using glass tubes, glass capillary tubes. And I walked away, somebody else used it in between. And the next time I put my samples in, I heard the centrifuge speeding up, and you kind of get used to the speed and how they sound. And all of a sudden I heard my glass tubes going crash, 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 lost 3 months worth of data. Yeah, you move on. That's what research is about. You have things that do not work out in research. If there's anything that's good to bring out when you have an interview for medical school, what they're going to care about more are the skills you've learned, lessons you've picked up along the way. They're probably, sorry to say this, but they probably don't care too much about what your research was. By and large, you kind of figuring out your molecular basis for X, Y, or Z is in the near future not going to have any impact on the field of cancer research. It's not going to change how you work as a practicing physician, but you have gained good skills in how to work with people from all walks of life, from other undergraduates like you to maybe some high school students coming in the summer, to all of these people with professional titles who think they know a lot and probably know a lot more than you do because they've been doing it for a while. But don't be worried about really being able to define your research and why it's going to change the world. Think about how it's going to benefit you as an individual, the skills you're going to grow, the time management, the fact that you're able to balance, 18 hours of being a biomedical engineering student during your junior year with 3 different student orgs that you were a part of, and 10 or 15 hours of research per week. Those are the kind of things that are going to matter. So don't get too worried about, oh, I've got to find this position right away, but do look into things that would be exciting for you to be a part of, and then get involved. And I don't know, I will go ahead and put it back out. Hanksy, Saul, any one of you, do you guys have fun in what you're doing when you go in to do your research? Hope smiling too. So go for it.
Yeah, it can be really fun. It's very rewarding, absolutely. I do like to point out though that if you enjoy doing it, it is very rewarding. If you just kind of think of it as work or something to put on your application, it can get very frustrating because as Bob pointed out, research is not point A to point B. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of wasted work. It of course depends on you personally, what your time commitment is and how much time you want to invest in it. But if you kind of think of it just in general, research takes a very long time and it takes a lot of failures and a lot of mistakes. But I personally do believe that when you get good results and when your boss, your PI, enjoys your results, does good work and all of that, it's very rewarding, and I think it makes it absolutely worth it.
Yeah, it's also one of those where you get a lot of continuity. You know, as undergraduates, you're taking a collection of new courses pretty much each semester. And so you don't have this tie to the same people. With research, I mean, you've been with the same people now for 3 years when you think about it. You've really gotten to know them, they've gotten to know you. You're treated as a major part of that lab. And I think that's one of the really rewarding pieces to it all. And as you were saying, you never know how things are going to come out in research, and that's actually one of the most fun things about it. It's not like, you know, your next level of biochemistry where you open the book, you learn everything that's already been known, and then you're ready for the next semester. It's a lot of trial and error, and it's like a great big chess game. You're learning how to make the moves, but then it's figuring out strategies to use those and see what can come from it. So it's fun. Well, you're on, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about your time commitment. You're up to doing this 3 years. You know you care about what you're doing. You've got a lot of responsibilities. So how much time do you spend per week now?
It's a long time. It's nearing about 30 hours per week, and that's a long time. But it's time that I want to spend there, I think, is the important thing to note. Of course, like if I want to like stick to my hours that I am being paid for, I can do that. You know, it's absolutely no stress. I make clear though that the extra time that I spend there, I want to be there. You know, I'm not feeling like I'm being forced to work late hours. And I think ultimately that's kind of what leads into like the grad student field or you know, the postdoc field, where on paper it seems like you have very strict hours and you work those hours. But like an experiment might go late, or if you're like me and you're still not exactly sure how to gauge how much time things take, you can kind of think you're a lot quicker than you are, and it takes a lot of time, a lot more time than you think. Sorry. And it also, you have to kind of factor in mistakes as well. Like I messed up a lot of Western blots last week, so I have to redo that experiment. So I'm investing that time again. So I will say that I said 30 hours. It does vary a lot though. I'm kind of peaking there now because I'm redoing a lot of experiments, and I kind of want to push a little bit more, especially now where I'm at that moment where I'm kind of, I know what I'm doing and I'm getting into more like new information, like research, like actually making discoveries. So that's where I'm at personally, I guess.
Great. Hope you haven't gotten a chance to say very much. Could you talk a little bit about your time commitment and how that's changed through your kind of involvement as you developed as a researcher from last year to this year? How are things going in terms of the amount of time you spend working each week?
Yeah, so I do about 11 hours a week. I'm not completely sure. I would say that's probably more typical though. And I would kind of say also that it is getting to the point where I stay later than the times that I'm scheduled to be there and stuff, because that's just sort of what happens. It's better to get an experiment done in one day or in 1 week if you can. So that's just sort of how things work out. But I feel like in the beginning, you kind of stick more to a schedule. And like one thing my PI told me is like grades come first. So if like you have an exam coming up, you need to take a day off or a couple days off from the lab, that's okay. Because I think someone mentioned it, what's really important is that you have good grades and stuff to get into medical school or other professional schools. But yeah, I would say the time, like the amount of time you're set to be there isn't representative necessarily of the commitment you have to your lab. It's about what you do when you're there. And then also you can expect just to be doing kind of, even when you're not in the lab, you might be doing like lit reviews or something outside of your lab. And so if you are really the kind of person who's very involved and invested in your research, it will take up a lot of your time, but it's very rewarding. I really love my research. Bob mentioned like the people, I'm very attached to those people and I know them so well, and I like to just be around them and be able to hear about their days and stuff. So getting to know the people is one of the big benefits of research.
Yeah. One of my favorite things when I was running a lab was watching the students come in when they didn't have their own projects to be doing, but because they wanted to be helping out with somebody else's project that was ongoing. You could just kind of see the commitment that was there. That always became part of my letters of recommendation when I was writing about them as well. But it does become, research is very much team, even though you think about it as this kind of weird one person in a white lab coat running around all on their own. Most any of the labs you're probably going to be looking at are going to be collections of people working together. One of the things that is good to do on the bottom of the ICRU homepage, down at the bottom, you can sign up for the ICRU listserv. And roughly every Thursday, we send out announcements about upcoming events that would be taking place. Things like the Fall Undergraduate Research Festival, the Spring Undergraduate Research Festival. Those can't really happen this year in the normal way because we can't have 200 people together come for a poster event, but we're finding out other ways. At the bottom of the page, like yesterday's, I think I counted up something like a dozen different research positions that were listed. And those tend to come more from College of Medicine. Well, it's easy to look within liberal arts or engineering or business at faculty and their research interests. Medicine doesn't list things in the same way. So that's a place where it's really good to have some extra help talking to people. And that's where kind of working with ICRU, where we've got really decades of experience, we've been working with the faculty here. We can help narrow that down for you and make it an easier search in that way. One of the other things, because I think this was supposed to, what time were we supposed to be finishing up? I heard something like 7:05 or is it 7:15?
7:15.
Yeah, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it was. Or Hanksy, whoever. When are we
Yeah,
supposed to
7:15.
finish?
around 7:15.
Okay, great. I think we're starting to push that a little bit. One of the things that I would say is when you're writing to a faculty member about an interest you have in working with them, one of the things you might not want to do is say, I'd like to talk with you about a research position in your lab. It's maybe a little bit more flexible if you just say, I was looking online, I was learning about the research that you do. I think it sounds really interesting because of X. Would I be able to meet with you, learn more about the research that you're doing? It doesn't put them on the spot. It gives them more of a chance to say, yeah, I'm going to see what this person is like. I mean, if you haven't noticed yet, you're kind of off the mark, but this is a bit of a strange time on campus right now. Every different research lab is under caps for how many people they can have in the lab at any point in time. So finding new positions in research, I think, is just a little bit more difficult. For the students who are already there and have ongoing projects, great, they're able to roll on. In fact, they're really essential to keeping our research moving forward. But for you as new students, it's a little bit more challenging. So, doing a follow-up within a week or so if you don't hear back from somebody. I think one of the questions earlier was, what would be kind of the wording for that? I would say just be relaxed about it. Just, hey, I'm the person who emailed you a week or so ago. Just wanted to check in, see if you got a chance to read my email yet. Love to talk with you about the work you have going on. But don't be too worried about knowing everything that goes on in that lab already. Just be straightforward, be who you are, but keep it short. They do not want to read a book, or if it starts going off the bottom of their screen, they've lost interest. They don't want to bring in somebody who's high maintenance into the lab, is basically what I would put it as. So just keep it short, keep it sweet. 4 or 5 sentences. I'm a sophomore studying X. I'm really excited about being involved in research, and I saw what you're doing. Would we be able to meet at some point in time and talk about the work you have going on? In all likelihood, you're probably not going to work directly with that faculty mentor. I don't know, Hope, Sal, Hanksy, I mean, are any of you working directly under your PI? You're working with a graduate student, a postdoc? Who are you working with when you started out, or who were you working with when you started out?
Go ahead, Saul.
No, you can go ahead.
You guys are tied for seniority.
Yeah,
So whoever wants to answer.
She muted her mic, so I'm gonna have to go.
Okay.
When I first started, and this is kind of the structure in our lab anyways, we have postdocs, as was explained previously, they have their PhDs. We also have just regular research assistants. So there's usually people with bachelors who have made a career of it. So they're just kind of research technicians, I refer to them as. They don't always design experiments, they kind of just do it. When new undergrads come in, we train under one of them first, and then we kind of get assigned to a postdoc as they see fit. I've kind of been weird. I kind of help a lot of people out with their experiments in the lab. So I work with a variety of postdocs and a few of those research assistants that I mentioned as well. So that's what I do.
Okay, thanks. And I see we're up to 7:13. So, Gianna, would it be good if we just kind of throw it out, say if there are any questions people have?
Yeah, it's okay if we go a little over.
Okay, so I think, or Hengsi, you were going to make comments before about who you work with, because you're working in 2 different lab settings as well.
Yeah, kind of like Saul described, you start working with graduate students, and then as you kind of stay in the lab for a longer time, you kind of level up, and you may get a chance to meet with your PI if they're not too busy. So,
one of the pitches I want to make before we get off is the importance of lab meetings that go on when you first start out in a lab. A lot of the larger labs will have a weekly or bi-weekly lab meeting where everyone comes together and talks about the work they're doing. So you get updates on all the different projects that are going on. One, they're a great way to learn about the other projects and what is done commonly in the lab. Also, they're a place where you can really feel like you don't know what's going on, because commonly these are, as Saul was bringing out before, these are postdocs that are there, the graduate students who've been doing this for the last 7, 8 years, maybe since they were undergraduates, the technicians who've been doing this for 10, 20, or 30 years because they do it for a profession. So don't feel intimidated in those. Just use them as a really, really good opportunity to learn more about what goes on in the lab, and then see how the work that you're going to do begins to fit into it. So if you get a chance to just say, hey, would I be able to attend a couple lab meetings that you have? That's a really, really great way to learn about what goes on, learn about the people that are there, learn about some of the personalities. Labs have personalities, and each individual in a lab has a different personality. And some of those technicians that Saul was talking about, they have very, very specific ways they want to see things done, how you're going to use this scale, how you're going to do this Western blot. They are also filled with knowledge. So if you want to befriend somebody when you start out in a lab, find the people who have been there the longest, who know how to do things. For the most part, don't ask the PI, the principal investigator, the faculty member who runs that lab, because they spend next to no time in the lab. They're busy writing the grants, they're writing the papers. They're commonly not going to be the knowledgeable people about how do I use this scale, how do I use this XYZ piece of equipment. Go to the technicians, go to the grad students, make them your friends, be available to them, be helpful, and they will really bring you along as well. So, you know, it's just like any social structure. Find ways to fit in with the group, be an asset, and then you're going to get more chances to do things yourself. So we're probably over our time. So what else would people like to know? Are there things that we could answer for them? Okay, so then again, we've got all of our ambassadors. Our email is icru@uiowa.edu. We're
Uh-oh, you frozen?
I think he froze.
Yeah, we're all fine. I think you froze. Oh no.
That's okay. Definitely check out the resources that he posted in the chat. Although he froze, we'll make sure to thank him when he comes back. But a big thank you to ICRU. Thank you to the representatives who were able to make it. And for everyone that kind of stuck out, stayed for the entire hour and 15 minutes, I hope it was very rewarding for you guys. If you have any questions, make sure to email them. And also, don't forget that we have our YouTube channel. So if you want to, look back at this video again, you can definitely check that out as well. But yeah, thank you guys very much again, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.